Mine was cool. It was just there. I slept a lot. Okay, so today we have lots of things to cover. So how did it go? The videos I sent to be watched. How did it go? Because I know I sent lots of videos. Thing is, not all there may not be enough time for us to really cover everything in class. We just have 2 hours every day. We have class. That's 3 times a week. Okay, Z index. Okay, no problem. So I'll just send videos sometimes for us to watch on our own. Then if you have questions, you let me know. That way we move faster. Okay, I'm going to explain Z index. I know I sent videos. I sent one for the position property. I think I sent one for display, but I sent for position property. I sent for shadows, box shadows, text shadows. I sent for that. Okay. Okay, Z index and positioning. We'll look at them today. Okay, so let's begin. So if you have questions, just let me know in the chat section. I'll check and I'll get back to everybody. So I'm going to clean up everything I have here. So this is going to be a fresh page. So part of what we'll be looking at today is how to push our code to GitHub. So I'm very sure our StackBlitz account is linked to GitHub. So we'll look at how to commit our changes to GitHub. That way, if we know how to do that well, we can migrate, we can stop using StackBlitz and go to using Visual Studio Code. So from there we can push directly to GitHub. So we'll look at how to commit our changes to GitHub. We'll look at that. And then GitHub it has a provision for you to host your site. So if you create something on GitHub and you have it in your repo, GitHub can give you a custom URL that you can send to someone. Same way StackBlitz can give you, but GitHub is better. It's better actually than StackBlitz, so it's cool. So yes, okay. So I am going to start with pushing our codes to GitHub first. That one I'm going to start with. Okay, so I have my HTML. Let's see. What's wrong with it? Okay, HTML. So I'll just make something very simple here and close it. And then in the head, let me have my title. So here I can just have it as here. Okay, so I have something simple here. Hello and welcome to my page. Zoom in. Okay, so we are going to push this testing code I just did. We are going to push it to Git. This sound. Hold on. Okay, so we're going to push this sample page from StackBlitz to GitHub. we're going to quickly do that. So there is an option here to connect your repository. I'm going to have to zoom out. So there's an option here for you to connect your repository. So because I have not connected anything, it doesn't show me anything. So I would have to connect a repository first. So just think of a repository as a folder, just like you have folders on your laptop. So think of a repository on GitHub as a folder that contains your code base. So you can have lots of folders. The same way you can have lots of folders on your laptop, it's the same way you can have lots of repositories on GitHub. Now the good thing about GitHub is GitHub allows you to make a repository private or public. So if it's public, anybody that comes to your GitHub profile or your account and then checks your repository, if it's private, the person won't see your repositories that are private. It's only you or whoever you invited as a collaborator in your code that can see it. If it's public, then anybody can see it. So say you're working for a company and then you're invited as a collaborator, and then say you have to have a copy on your GitHub account, you'd have to make that private so that people won't see your company code. So GitHub allows you that. So I'm going to connect now. So you can choose the repository name. Let's call this make 6. So there's option to make it private, but I won't make it private. So I'll create a repo and push. So StackBlitz automates this for you. It's going to be quite different if you are working on this on your laptop. So while it's doing that, I'll go to my GitHub account. Yeah. So I'll go to my GitHub account. Let's see. Once it adds up, you'll see it's here. Once it adds up, I have about 30 repositories and I have some that are private. So the reason why you're seeing it is because I'm sharing my screen. If you check my profile right now, this project that I have here that are private, you won't see them. So let's hold on. It's still connecting. Please hold on. While it's syncing, for those who are not available, there was a class I know I did. I wasn't able to drop the recording because it became faulty at some point. In that class, we looked at color codes, we looked at gradients. So I'll just touch that while we are waiting for this to connect. So there is a site called UI Gradients. So what UI Gradient does is it gives you gradients. So like I said, as a developer, not as a developer, there are lots of colors in this world. There are lots of colors, and they are limited, and they are not limited to the names you have. So you have blue, there is sky blue, there is aqua blue. I think there are different kinds of blue. There is navy blue. So if you're coding, you don't need to always write the names because there is a limit to what names. Say for example, this color you have here, this particular color we have here, this is a shade of blue. This is also a shade of blue. I think going from here to here, these are different shades of blue. So you might want to pick a particular color, and that color you won't know the name. And that's why we make use of what is called hex codes, color codes. We have hex codes. We have color codes in programming, and the division of color codes is hex codes. So like the name implies, hex is 6. So if you notice here, the name you have here, just check the name you have here, that's the code for this. For example, is #0058887. Now if you count is 6 in number, so this is a hex code. This is a hex code. So there are different colors and gradients you have. There are different gradients you have. Let's see if this is still connecting. Wow. So there are different gradients on planet Earth. UI gradient simplifies your work for you. So if you're trying to build something from scratch yourself and you're thinking up of what colors to use, UI gradients can give you inspiration, so you can choose whatever color it is you want. This looks okay, so you can choose whatever color you want. But if you're working with a design, say you're working with a UI UX designer, the UI UX designer already has designed everything, so you don't need to start checking online for color codes, because the color codes and everything is already presented for you there. So for now, just for testing purposes, we'll just make use of this is nice, make use of UI gradient. We'll just check a color code or a gradient that we like, and we'll use it to create something beautiful. I like this blue. Still connecting. Let's duplicate this page. Okay, so while it's connecting, we can be working on the page. So I have this here. So what I want to do, okay, so what I want to do is pick this color code. So UI gradient does the hard work for you. So you can click on there are options here. You can choose this button. It will get the CSS for you. If you want it as a picture, you can get it here, but what you want is the CSS. So when you click on this button, it gets it, and you can copy it. That's what it does for you. So you'd notice some things it did here. So the CSS code has a default background. Now this background is a fallback for old browsers. When creating a site, you don't just assume that all of your users are going to make use of modern browsers. Some might make use of an old browser. So if your site is not accommodating enough for people who might make use of old browsers, you would have an issue. You can even have users complaining about your system. So this is a fallback. By default, if it's a modern browser, it won't check for this first line background. What it will check is either of this WebKit linear gradient or this. That's what it's going to check for. So it's even giving you the options what kind of browsers will check for whatever it's going to check. So I'm going to copy this, and you see which one my browser picks up. So the browser does most of the heavy lifting for you. You just need to allow your browser to do its work. So copy. Is this still connecting? Okay, please hold on. Refresh. Can everyone still hear me? Can everyone still hear me and see my screen? I'm thinking this is a network problem. Yes. Okay. So what's the problem? Let me try this again. Let me just use this name: create repo and push. Okay, let me try this again. So here I have my. So I'm going to make the background of my page this color I just copied. So I'll come in the head and add the style tag. So inside my style tag, I'm just going to tag it. So I have the body. Now I want to make have this color, and yes, I just do this. And when I check this page, you see this is how it looks. So inspecting, what I'm going to see here is that the color it shows, you see the color my browser chose, or the gradient it shows, is this linear gradient. So different browsers, so that for some different browsers you'd have to make use of the WebKit, so it knows what to do. So like this is basically it. So my browser didn't go for the first, it didn't go for the second. Sorry about that. So my browser didn't go for the first row or the second row, it went for the third row. So that's just how gradient works, or color, and color codes also. So you wouldn't need to stress yourself to know what color code. And if you notice this in your browser, if you click on this or if you hover on this, you can open your color picker. So clicking on this, for example, gives you a color picker. So automatically anywhere on your page, say for example, let me pick this, anywhere on your page you pick a color from, it is going to change it. So you see it's changed the color for me. You can also pick the color too from here, so you can change, you can tweak it to do whatever it is you want. So you can just get very creative and touch it up. Yep. So this is like things you can do with this. So yep. So I'm just going to refresh this page. Okay, still connected. This is bad. Very bad. Okay, so I have this here. I hope that part was clear. I hope the part about color codes was clear, please. Okay, so UI gradients, just one down. So next, okay, thank you, Victoria. So next I'm going to go to Google Fonts. So I'll just pick a font I want to use for today. So just pick one. PT Sans looks okay. So I'll pick PT Sans. I'll select this. Select this so it's bold. This is fair. So I'll just this is right. I'll just pick. So the name of the family is PT Sans. Then the fallback is sans serif, or whatever fallback you want to use. So I'll add this here. Cool. Then I'll make sure that I add PT Sans as my default font. So I'll just copy this and add it here. Save. Okay. Yeah, so this looks okay. So I need the color of this to be white. It looks too blackish. I like it. So this is how it looks actually. 100%. I just had to zoom in so everyone can see. So this is it. So now next thing we want to do is we want this, you see this that we have here, this this hello and welcome to my page. We don't want it to be at the top left. We want it to be at the middle. We want to be at the center. That's where we want it to be, at the center. So anybody that comes to this page, person sees hello and welcome to my page, person sees it here. That's what I want. So to do that, I can make use of To do that, I can make use of, let's see, still connecting. To do that, I can make use of a position property. Okay, I can make use of a position property. To better explain what Z index is, I'm going to wrap this in a P tag. So now we have two elements. We have the body and then we have the P tag. So by default, I'm going to see how well to explain. I think I'll need okay, just to explain. The Z-index property specifies the stack order of an element. So an element with greater stack order is always in front of an element with a lower stack order. It's just like elements by default. When you add them, they are like in a queue, like when you go to the bank, you're on a queue. So it's first come, first serve. But then there are some cases when someone wants to jump the line and go to the front. So if it happens that you want an element not to be at the back and you want it to be at the front, you can make use of Z-index. So any element that has a higher Z-index is going to be pushed all the way to the front. The one that has a lower Z-index will go to the back. So by default, what happens here is that the P tag is going to be on top of the body. That is why you're going to see that the text is on top of the background. I don't know if that makes sense, but you would see the text on top of the body. But if I make this body have a high Z-index, say I just add Z-index of 6, so whatever, let's see, let's give this a Z-index of 5, for example, and okay, something is wrong. It's not working. Okay, I missed something. So where am I? Still connecting. Okay, so here where I have the body, if I give this body a position of relative, let's do this. Let me create a div. Better still, let me make a div or a section. So I'll create a section here and I'll call this main section. Then inside my section I have a P tag, then hello there. So say I have this and then I have another section below. Let me call this section the footer section. Let me zoom in again so everyone can see this better. So here I say this is another P, then I say created by me. So I save this. Let me remove this background I gave this. I will remove this background. I'll come back to this later on. Just hold on. Okay, save. So yeah, this is what happens. Now let me just give this main section its own comment here is closing. Okay, printed. So I want to target this main section, and I want to give it a background of red. Then I'm targeting this footer section, and I'll give it a background of green. So if I save this and I run, okay, so this is how it is. So by default, according to what it was in the video, every element is the property that it has by default is static. By default, the position of every element is static. So the way it's stacked is every element, like if you, this is the main section, any one you put after comes after. So just like first come first serve, that's how it is here. So the moment I want to change that order, I can make use of a position property to change the order. So if I want this footer section to not be to say I just don't want this footer section to be here, say I want this footer section to be somewhere up here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, somewhere at the top right, I can give it a position of absolute. So what that position absolute in this case is going to do is this. So position absolute okay. So with the position absolutes, there are if you change your position from being static, by default every element you create has a position of static. So you'll notice that if it's not absolute, for example, and I make use of properties like top 0px, nothing works. Left 0px, nothing works. This top and left, top just means where the element should start from. So top means 0px, that's 0 pixels on the top, so it should be somewhere up here. If I say left 0px, it means it should be somewhere here too, because it's left. So when you, by default, if an element is static, 4 properties are not available to it. Top, left, we have right, then we have bottom. But if an element becomes absolute, if it becomes relative, you would see that I can make use of these properties. So if I change this to being relative here, you see nothing happened to the wave, it's still the same thing. So relative is just like static, but the difference is that you have these options available to you. So the moment I say left should be 70, you see what happens, it's pushed it. And it's unlike your margin. When you give margin, you see space. Let me explain this. So say it was margin I was giving to this, and I said margin left 70px. Margin left 70px. You would see that the margin left gives you you see this space it gives you, but left doesn't do like that. Left takes that element. So what left does here is it doesn't give you that margin. What it just does is it doesn't care, irrespective, it just pushes it. You want me to push it, I push it for you. Now you notice that the moment I did that, it gave me a scroll bar. By the way, if you're creating a site, your site should never have a horizontal scroll bar. That is bad programming. Your site should be 100% width. Like nothing should make your site scroll to the right. Your user should not have to be scrolling to see something. So that's one. So this is to the left, so it is moving it to the left. If I want it to the right, I can say 7px from the right. Okay, sometimes things are tricky. It's weird. It didn't work. Okay, it's because I had left. That's why it didn't work. So because I had left, the left stopped it from working because it's starting from 0. So the right is supposed to push it, not to start from 0. That is, the 0 pixels means it's starting from here. That's from the beginning. That's what the 0px means. 0px, 0% starts from there. So if I remove this left, if I uncheck this, you see it goes to the, it pushes it for me. So it doesn't care. You'd see that even what I wrote here, created by me, is not visible anymore. To an extent, it's not visible. So this is this. So that's what it does. So for top, let's look at top. So if I say top of 90px, you see it pushes it down. See, this is what top does. Top pushes it down for me. So these are like the things available to your disposal. You can play with them to see how they work, but this is just how positioning works. So I would revert back. So let's make this 0px. Let's make this 0px. Okay, so if I change this to absolute, okay, this is absolute. So you see how very weird absolute property is. So the absolute property just, so the absolute property is a very tricky property. You make sure you use absolute property when it's absolutely necessary. It's not a property you should just use every time, because the absolute property can mess up your code, especially on different devices. So your absolute property might work well on laptop screen, but then on your phone screen you might have issues. So you just need to make sure you're doing like okay with your, what's it called, with your position absolute. So position absolute is what it does is it brings out the, so by default every element you create it is supposed to be stacked. Oh, what the hell? It's supposed to be stacked. If I make it relative, this is how it's supposed to be, but when I make it to be absolute, it takes it off. It's more like saying I'm out of this, like I'm not part of the family anymore. So where it goes to is, okay, so far, have I been speaking English? Like so far, do you understand? Oh, finally, I think it linked. It linked. It did. Wait. It didn't. Oh, okay. Hell. Okay. This positioning part is. Let me try this again. I'm going to try to explain the positioning property again. I think that's where we all don't understand. Then even after this one we still don't understand, then is to watch the videos. So I created 2 sections here, a main section. So the main section is what should contain my main content. That's why I gave it the name main section. I gave it the idea of main section. Then I created a footer, a section. I give it ID of footer section. So anybody that comes checks knows that okay, this is the footer section. I just give it content created by me. I had a p tag inside. That's what I did. So I gave it background for us to see what happened when you create elements. So when you create elements, they are stacked relatively. I don't mean to use the word relative, but the way they are stacked is one after the other. That's what happens when you create elements on a web page. They are stacked one after the other. So the first, anyone you add comes after the one before. That's what happens by default. So by default, every element you create has a position of static by default. every element you create by default has position of static. Like static, nothing changes here, nothing changes at all, it's static. But if I put absolute, something changes. So by default is static. But the thing about it being static is there are some CSS rules that you can't use static, that you can't use with the static position property. I hope this part is clear. There are some rules you can use with the static position property, like the top I spoke about, the bottom, the left, the right properties. You can't use them with static. So if I say top 60px, nothing happens because it's position static. It doesn't even see, like the browser is blind to anything that has to do with top, bottom, left, right, because it's static. But the moment I change the position to being relative, you would see that I can now have access to top, because you see now the top has it's been pushed down. That is just what happened here. It's been pushed down 60px. I'm just testing, depends on what you want. Not really. Once it's there, it's fixed. There is a position called fixed. Okay? But static just means that what you put here, how best can I explain static? What you put here, any other element you put comes, any other element you put after it is just English. It's just like a queue. That's how that static is. That's just like the best way to explain static. There are some I don't know if anyone has gone to some sites where when you're checking the site, the nav bar, no matter how you scroll, is fixed to the top. I don't know if anyone has noticed that. No matter how you scroll, it's fixed to the top. There are some sites when you scroll, you don't see the nav bar anymore. You have to go back to the top for you to see the nav bar. For that nav bar to still be there, no matter how you go, is position fixed. So fixed means it's stubborn. No matter what you do to this page, I'm going to be in this position fixed. So that's why I am answering that. Static basically doesn't mean once it's there, it's there. No. So once it's there, is the fixed property. Absolute, what absolute does is I'm not doing again, like I don't want to be part of this family. So if you're telling me I'm supposed to follow, I'm not going to follow the order. I'm just going to follow the parents. That's what absolute does. Absolute is more rebellious. I think that should help. Absolute is a rebellious property. Fixed is more like very stubborn. It doesn't go anywhere. It's fixed to that position you set it to. Static is the default for every element you create. That is like the default. That's what static is. Then when you use relative, you have relative is like static, but the difference is that you can make use of CSS rules like top, left, bottom, right. These properties you can't use with static. That's like the difference. So I'll come back here again and just do this. If I make this static, this top is not working, it's not seeing it. But the moment I make it relative, you see I can make use of top 60px. I can even give it a negative value. You see it goes inside. That's what happens here. I can make it minus 90 and it has disappeared. It's up, it has just continued going. If I want to make it, if I change it to left, you see it goes inside. So you can use this to, because there are some sites you go to. Yes, relative is friendly. Absolute is not friendly. Absolute can spoil your work, actually. It can. When I was learning programming, position property was a very annoying thing to learn. It took me a lot of time to learn positioning, and I was always running away from absolute because I didn't know how to use absolute well. So when I use absolute, it would mess up my work. So I'll try my best to make use of relative and not absolute at all. But with time, I got used to using absolute. Like there are sometimes you will see some cards, the way the cards are stacked, they just had to have been absolute. I'm going to, okay, you'd see this on what's it called, on GitHub. This nav bar is fixed. No matter how I scroll, it's fixed. This, for it to be this way, is position fixed. There's a positioning property called fix, but you don't use it most of the time. You use it mostly for anything you want to be fixed. Let me see if there is a site that, do I know any site that has some cards that are stacked somehow? If I come across anyone, I would let us know. But so far, the confusion, hope it's been cleared a bit. Okay, I'm all said yes. Okay, cool. We are making progress. No other person. Okay, Victoria. Okay, so this is what relative does. So relative, you can use top left, bottom right, depends on how you want it to be. So now the reason why I had to talk about position is because of what I want to do. So what I was saying was I wanted the text I created to be inside here, like not like inside here. I wanted it to be in the center. So for me to make it to be in the center, I need to give it a position property that will allow me to tweak it the way I want to tweak it. So that's why I was trying to explain this whole thing. So if I give this, okay, let's do this. So if I give this absolute, you see what happens here. Absolute, this is what happens to absolute. Even the width, it's affected the width, so it's not 100% anymore. Now you see what happens if I give this a top of 0px. Now you see that it went exactly to the top to stay. So absolute, the way it works is it's absolute to its parent. So absolute is more like a prodigal child that is always looking for his parents, be it his mother or his father. So in this case, the parent of this element that has absolute is the body. So it went to attach itself to the body. That is where it followed. So it is not following its siblings that is stacked, not the way they are stacked. It even went to put itself on top of the main section that is background red. So because I gave it 0 pixels, it went to the top. So if I want this to move from being here to come to the right, I'll just need to say right 0px, and you see that it goes to the right. So that is just like that here. So if I come here and say left 0px, you see it comes back to the left. Now you see that it's this section, this because I gave it absolute covers by default an element that's coming after should not cover the element before. It shouldn't, but here it is covering it. So for me to fix this, that is where Z index comes in, because you might use absolute or relative and then it causes issues. So say I still want this main section, this background to still show. So what I'll just need to do is give it a Z index of, say, wait, I need to give it, Z index works if it has a position attached to it. So if I say position relative, you'd see that that's Z index, because it has it is a high number. Even if I give it 5, we didn't set a Z index for footer, so let's just assume it's 0. So because 5 is higher than 0, because we did not set a Z index for this, automatically it just pushes. Z index just has to do with visibility. How visible do you want it to be? So if it is at the back, Z index just brings it to the front. It's more like something that is hidden and you want it to be there on your site. So Z index, that's why I just did. So the Z index just pushed it to the front for me. By default, I'm going to explain again. By default, because I gave it position absolute and I gave it top 0px, it went to the parent, which is the body, to stay. And because it went there, the element that I wanted to be shown, which is this, the main section that has hello there, is hidden. It just covered it for me, which I don't want to be so. So to fix it, I can use Z index. So the element that I know is hidden, I want to show, I'll just give it a higher Z index than the one that is covering it. So 5 is higher than 2, 3 is higher than, 2 is higher than, 1 is higher than. But if I give it 0 is higher than. Yeah. So this so you'd notice it didn't work at all. So the Z index only works when you give it a position. So when I give a position of relative, tada, it works. So it doesn't work for static, and actually static is a default, and you notice it didn't work. So once I did this, it worked. So you see that 0 is the default. So 0, the background still covered it. Well, 1, it covers. So by default, every element has a Z index of 0. I hope I spoke English. I just hope I tried to speak English. So I'm going to go back to what I was working on. So I was working on this here, then I had this. So let me make it of the main tag. So let's call this. So whatever ID you give is up to you. You get to choose. So I can put in my name. So when I save this and I run this page, this is what happens here. So my color becomes black by default. Then the background I give it shows up. So I want this to be centered, so I can just target my so I can target my P tag and just make it text align center and running this. What happened? Okay, it's centered now. So it's centered. Now I want this. Okay, color. I want the color to be white. Okay, so I also want the font size to be bigger, so I can say font size 3em. I want this very bold. Then I want it to be very bold. I can say font weight, sorry, bold. Okay. this is looking okay. Zoom out. So 100%. Okay. 5 a.m. It's 100% 5 a.m. So so now let's work with the position property. So this here, this main container here, this is where it is currently. So if I give a position of relative and I say top, for example 0px, nothing changes because that's where it's supposed to be, top. If I say 50px, you see it pushes it down. By the way, you can use percentage also. You can use percentage also, but it's quite tricky. So let me see if EM works too. You can have 4, you can have 5. So you just need to like use your eyes to check if it's centered. At times you just have to do that. So you can say 7 a.m. Okay. Yeah. This looks pretty there. You can have a text underneath. Let's give it an H4 that says, by the way, just so that I won't have to repeat this, text align, all elements should be aligned and all elements should have color white. So I'm adding it to the body, so I wouldn't have to add that again for this H4. So I can just put here front end space developer. Okay, so this is what happened. Oh, I didn't add the positioning I gave. I added the position, I didn't add it. So I said position should be relative. Then I said from the top should be 7 a.m. So this is what I said should happen here. So this is what happens here. Okay. So this is this. Now this is the space. This P, this is the space that the P is taking. That's why this front end developer here is here, and I'm thinking that's because of the margin that it has. So I can just remove the margin. So you can remove the margin, top 0px, margin bottom 0px. Weight bold. Yeah, so I've removed that spacing as it should be. So copy this, then I'll put it inside here. So save. Yep. So let's make this H3 so it's bigger. H3 is still not doing it. H2 is still not doing it. H1. Okay. H1 is fair. Now you can give the H1 a letter spacing of 1.3 px. just so that the letters don't look too joined together. It's if you want, you can add it. I like adding letter spacing anyways. This H1 has a margin at the top, so I'll just remove the margin. So I'll say margin top 0px. Yes, so I can just target my H1 because I know I don't have any other H1, so nothing is going to affect it. Oh, so margin top 0px. I think I gave it letter spacing of 1.2 px, I think. So we change this to H1 and H1, and when I run this, it's not 1.2, 1.8. Yeah, so we have something here. So because if I remove that margin, the top is not really working as I wanted it to, so I just need to tweak the top again. So say 8. Let's see 8. See what happens with 8. See what happens with 10. See what happens with 13. Okay, 13 is fair. 13 is fair. So this is something nice. So we can have a button here. So let's quickly create a button. Let's create a button. So now I noticed that with the assignment I gave the other time on input boxes, some of us made use of submit. Now what submit to this is going to reload that page because it's supposed to submit a form. So we don't want that, because if I add submit here and I just put in bunch of gibberish, I refresh here, if I click, sorry, it's supposed to refresh. If you do this locally, it's going to refresh. Button type submit is going to, I'm guessing Stag Blitz disabled it, because nothing, you can't submit anything this way. So by default, please make it button. Then you just have to style it to make your button look better. So let's name this button Hire Me. Then give it a font size. So let's style the button now. So we style it. Now there are some things you notice about buttons. While some are able to work well with buttons, not all can work well with buttons, I noticed. So you'd see that it has a background color already. It has color already, text indents. It has font already. It has padding. It has width. Yeah, it has border color, which is what you see here. So we want to change some of this. So we don't want the border color. I don't want it. So I'll just say border color. You can say transparent. You see it has gone away. I can increase the font size to 20px or 40px. Then you see that the font is using, the font family is Arial. Arial, that's what it's using here. So I'll just change it and say font family PT Sans. Oh, sorry, PT Sans here. And I can say font weight bold. Now this looks better. So we can give it a width. We can say width of 3 em. Say 10. Even 15. We can say 15 em. That's make it wide. Then we can give it a border radius of say 10px. So I'll just copy everything I just added here, copy, come here, add it, save. then run this page. Yeah, and I want this color to be the same color instead of black. So the color of that section, I think, is this. I'll just come here and say color of the hash in front. So when I save and I run, yep, this looks like a very fanciful site for starters. 12, let's see, fresh. Sorry, I'm trying to make this. Yeah, this looks okay. This looks cool. I can give this a letter spacing. .7 px. Save, run. Okay, yes, you'd have to catch up with the recording. I think this is going pretty fast for everyone. So this is just what I did. So I was able to create something fine. So to make this align center, I had to make use of position relative property. I gave it a top, so I just used my eye to just calculate how far I want it to be from the top, and then I gave it. Then by default, this element here had a margin top and margin bottom, so I just removed the margin top and margin bottom, which is what I did here. Yes, I gave margin top and margin bottom. I removed it, so it's 0px. Then I made the font to be bold, made the font bold. Then this one underneath, which is the H5, no, the H1, it had a margin top, so I removed the margin top. Then I gave it, then I gave it a letter spacing. I gave it a letter spacing of 1.8. Give the letter spacing. Then I created the button here. So what I just did was to remove the default. So by default, buttons have how they are styled, which we saw in the browser. So what I just did was to add mine. I gave it the color I wanted, the background I wanted. I removed the border color. I made the border color transparent, and then I gave it a border radius. That's just all I did. So I'm just going to stop here. This I'm going to stop for today. I'm going to look at how to push this. I don't know what's wrong with that bit. I just don't know. Okay, so what I'll just do is I would download this project. That's what I'm going to do. Is either I download this or I just copy the content. So I'll just show us how to create something basic. So you come to GitHub, you click on new. So you create a repository if you want to. So I can just call this Code Fixins FEB week 6. You can give it a description if you want. I'm making it public. A readme file is just more like introduction to your code base, just to explain to people what your code base is about and all of that. So I don't want that. I'll just click on create repository. So it creates a repository for me. Then okay, now I'm showing you this because these are things you'd have to set up, but we'll not look at this here because we're not working with VS Code yet, so just don't bother yourself with things like this. So you click on this getting started, creating a new file. So in the new file you give it a name, index.html, which is the name you have here on Stackbase, index.html. I'm just trying to create a folder. Until you create your folder on your laptop, I'm just trying to create it on GitHub. I'll just paste what I just copied here, and I will commit. So commit is more like, the way GitHub works is you make pushes. So you work on something, you push, like you're just pushing it somewhere, you're pushing it to GitHub. So before you can push, you need to commit. So that commit is like explaining what your push is for, what you just worked on, what is it. So I can just explain and just say testing page, anything you want to, you can just add, you commit it. And yes, so I have this. So if you come to my code base and you check, you'd see my repository now is 31. So you see here. So yeah, I have this here. So this is one. Then I'll quickly do something here. So when you go to settings, you scroll down to GitHub pages. So this is where you can host your site. So I'm selecting the main branch. Just follow this the way I'm doing it in the just follow what I'm just doing. So what has happened is it has created this for me, and if I come here using this link, it's ready to be published. Using this link, I should see my code, but it takes time to load anyway, so you would have to wait for it to propagate. But if I come back to this page after a couple of minutes, I'll see that it's there. So I'm stopping here. Okay, yours connected to GitHub, so it could be my network. So if you're connected to GitHub, in your settings, you go to GitHub pages. From GitHub pages, you can make sure you select the main, because that's the default branch when you work on Git. So that's like your default branch when you create a repository on GitHub. So it just does everything for you. Let me try refreshing, save it. It's still taking time. So now if you have questions, please fire me. You have time to answer questions. Or would we prefer to watch videos? Which one? Or ask if there's anyone. Okay, come out, ask please. Main. Yes, I can hear you, come out. Okay, yeah, horizontal scroll bar. How would I explain that? You need to make sure that in whatever you're doing, sometimes absolutes can cause it, sometimes even margin can cause it. So you just need to make sure whatever you are adding, once you notice a scroll bar appears, you'd look for what is causing it and fix it. At times it could be px. If you're giving it px, that's why sometimes it's not recommended to use px. So say you're using px, and say you give an object or an element on your desktop. Say you give it, say your laptop screen is 1200 px, for example. You give that width to the element. Now the moment you go on a phone to check that page, because of that width you've given it that is much, what happens is there will be a scroll bar, because it's just trying to accommodate what you said it should do. So you just need to just like check and fix it. Come on, have I answered your question? Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so you would see here, I know GitHub made changes recently, but it's the main. If you see, that is the branch that is here, main. Probably yours is showing master, but whatever it shows, master is what it used to show before. But GitHub has changed their name to branch name, the default branch. When you create your code, a repository, the default branch is main, and that's why I selected. So if what is showing on your end, Shaitan, is a master, then you select master. If you want to, that is if you're on GitHub pages, you select master. What's shown on my end is main. Okay, questions. Let me check this. I didn't get that. Are you asking about what I just did on GitHub? Oh, okay. I just hosted this my code. I created a new repository, then I just copied the content of this index.html. I just copied it. I created the file index.html, copied the content, then I went to settings. No, when you watch the video you see it outlined. And I went to settings, then here I just selected the branch I want to host, and then he hosted it for me. He gave me a link, so this is my publishable link. So it's just that it's taking time to load, but once it does, it's because it's already published, it's going to show up once it does. Please mute your mic. The last video you said you would get back to hex code and RGB. Can you see that? Okay, I've touched on hex code. I've touched on hex code. RGB. Let me quickly touch RGB. So if you click on okay, so if I click on this color here, what it gives me is the hex value. If I select any color, it's also give me the hex value. That's what it does. Now you have this scroll bar. Look at the scroll bar here. So you have, there are different ways to call colors in CSS. You can use the hex value, you can use the RGBA value, you can use the RGB value, then you have the HSLA, which anyways is, I don't use, developers don't use them. This stuff is just like stress anyways, but for your coding you would mostly use hex, RGBA, that's what you use. So the difference between RGB and RGBA is RGBA has this. So this A is for your transparency. If I change this to 0, it becomes transparent. So this A stands for the opacity. Let me see. It's really, I would have to check. I'm coming. Please let me check RGB because I understand it, but RGB. Okay. So an RGB color is specified with red, green, blue. So the RGB stands for red, green, blue. Then each parameter defines the intensity of the color as an integer between 0 and 225. So that's what happens. That's for RGB. Then the moment you add A, that A there stands for the opacity. So 1 is the highest. We touched opacity in the last class. So 1 is the highest. 0.9 is close. 0.2. You see that as I'm adding the number, this scroll or this spot in here in the meter, it either goes up or down. If I make it 0, it goes down. If I even do this myself, it gives me the value. So this RGBA just defines the intensity. I prefer using hex codes, but if it happens that you want to target opacity, you just need to get the RGBA value of your hex code. That way you can be able to target the opacity however way you want to. So you can either do it, give the color, the hex code, then give your opacity with your CSS rule. Opacity should be 0 or 0 point, whatever you want, or you can use RGBA. So it's different things. This color we have here, I'll refresh this page again so you see here where we have here. If I come here and make this RGBA, just RGB. Meanwhile, if you're working with gradient, you don't use RGB values for gradient, you use hex codes for gradients. You see, the moment I added RGB, it went back to background, because so it has to be RGB. See that's all. Let's see, this should the same thing too. So you make use of hex codes. So the moment I come here and I select RGBA here, you see it changes, but the color is still the same thing. What just changed was the way I'm rendering my color. So that is just it. That's just what I did then. I hope that part is clear. So any other question? Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? Please let me know. Questions. Let's see. Okay. Still taking time to load. Questions. Let me get some very clear images and see what we can just quickly tweak right now. I know we haven't touched this before, but I'm going to quickly touch it. We haven't touched background image. We've looked at image. We've looked at how to use background, but not background image. So URL, background image takes that's a tautology. Background image, so what it takes is URL. So the URL can either be the URL of the image on your server, if it's local, your laptop, then you can have the link like your image address, something. Now you see I have changed this, so now the moment I did that, you'd see it changed the background for me. These like some cool things you can do. Let me look for a much better image. I think this one looks. I think I like this copy image address. So if I come here and I click on inspect, so it's the body. I just come here again, URL, that's what it takes. Inside the URL I put quotes inside, then this is what happens. Yay! So this looks okay. By the way, their properties, this is lovely. I love this. This is actually very lovely. Sorry, please don't call me. Let me move this background image URL, this and this, and close and save and run. This is lovely. So there are different properties it takes, but for now, okay. So no other person has questions. Okay, so it's just to watch the videos. Then there are different ones you can use. You can use how you want the background position to be, if you want it to repeat. There are lots of things you can do with it anyways. There are lots of things you can do with it. The image I picked is an image that is very wide, but if I pick an image that is not wide enough, say I pick an image like this, for example, copy image address, and I change it here, URL, this image is still okay. This is nice. This is very, very nice. Now you'd see that this image here, this is where it stopped. The next image continued, so it's repeating itself. So if it happens you are using an image, automatically it will continue repeating until it fills the whole page for you. That's what it does by default. Thank you, Given. So you can just go and check for images and design something nice and put your name, and you can just put that as your first tech site. Come and hire me. I should hire you. You've done something nice. So this, you can choose any font of your choosing. So the assignment for today is to play around. So you can use background images, you can use gradient, just play around, create something. We've looked at z-index, position property. Watch the video. Then if you are still having issues trying to push to Git, no problem, you can send me the link to your Starkblade so I can check it out. If not, you can send the link to, if you're able to host it, you can send the link to it on GitHub so I can check it out. So you just play around. You can create exactly what I just created, fine. You can create something unique if you want to, but just play around. That's just it. Assignment is just to play around. So no other question. No other question. No other question. Okay, in the absence of questions, this is where I'm going to stop for today. So hopefully this video, because the good Lord knows everything I said today, I don't want to say it again. Please, everyone, to put this video in prayer. This video should not be faulty. So okay, so we are going to stop for today. Again, everyone, thank you for today. So any questions, you can let me know in the Slack channel. If anyone has been trying to reach me on WhatsApp, I am not currently available on WhatsApp, so Slack for now. If you really need to. Thank you very much, Tofumi. So if you really need to reach me urgently, you can do so. I normally don't respond to messages you send via assignments on time. So if you want it to be answered on time, you can just send it to me on Slack and then I would check. You're welcome, Given. Thank you, Shaitan. Yeah. Okay. Everyone, take care. Bye. Thank you, Lainka.